Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. This is the third webinar that we've organized so far, and it's really great to see such a large crowd joining us today. So I'm just here to kick things off. My name is Meghna Thomas. I'm a member of the EWRI Water Distribution Systems Analysis Graduate Student Task Committee. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically we are a group of graduate students, postdocs, and professors who are trying to build a community for grad students and postdocs who work in this area. We want grad students to be able to network, to get to know others in their field. This could hopefully lead to collaboration and just generally give us a space to talk to each other. So what we do is we organize webinars such as this one, both on professional development topics and on topics of technical interest. And we're also trying to organize in-person events when there are conferences that a bunch of us are going to be at. So I just wanted to make a couple of short announcements and invitations, I guess. So this group right now, there's 7 graduate students and postdocs in the group. Several of us are here: Aly, Tomer, Bunni. There's also Sabrina, Camilo, and Gerardo. And we'd love to have more grad students and postdocs join us because everyone has ideas and everyone has different interests, and they come from different places, literally different countries, and have different requirements. So we'd love to get more feedback on what you'd like from a graduate student task committee, topics for webinars, for example, or events or other things that you'd like. We'd love to have more feedback. So later I'm going to put in the chat an email address. Please let us know if you'd like to join us, or just let us know if you have any suggestions or anything you'd like for us to do. So that's number one. Number two is that we have a LinkedIn page where we post announcements for webinars and stuff that we hold. And we also share a lot of job opportunities and graduate opportunities like PhD and postdoc positions that we find. And I think we get a lot of water distribution systems postings up on there. So please follow us. I'll put that link in the chat as well. And finally, if you're coming to the upcoming EWRI Congress in Milwaukee in May, we are going to be hosting 2 events there. So right after the welcome reception, we're going to have a social event. We're going to take everyone to a bar close by and hopefully buy a round of drinks, hopefully, for the group. And also we're planning, there's a whole dedicated session where we're going to hold a career panel. We've invited postdocs, professors, researchers from the EPA, from a national lab, and from companies like Autodesk and Optimatics to share their experiences in grad school and what their whole career progression was like. So we'd love for you to join us. And I'm going to put a final link in the chat, which is going to be like an RSVP form, just so we have an idea of how many people are interested. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our special guest for today, Dr. Blair Johnson at the University of Texas at Austin.
Good morning. Thanks, Meghna. Good to see you all. Can I go ahead and share and get started? Okay. PowerPoint has not been super compatible recently with my Zoom, so hopefully this all works okay. Okay. Are you seeing the right view, or is it my view?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So today, we'll be discussing conference presentation skills. This is mostly focused on oral presentations, but there are sure some tips in here that can also be applied to posters and just kind of thinking about presenting in general. So yeah, I'm a civil engineering professor at UT Austin. My work's in turbulence fluid mechanics. You guys will see a glimpse of that, but not much of it, thankfully. So, all right. All right, what is an oral presentation? An oral presentation or research talk is a chance for you to share your research with your peers. If you're like, what the heck is she doing right now? Stay with me, I promise we're going somewhere. To share your research with your peers, your funding agency, and your community members. It usually consists of PowerPoint slides that you click through so you can read off of them directly. If you face the slides while you read them, it helps the audience feel like you're one of them. Oral presentations provide a great opportunity to brag about your coolest research findings. It is also a great opportunity to show off how smart you are. If the audience can't keep up or doesn't understand, that's their problem. You need to prove how much hard work you've done. So you should probably try to overwhelm your audience with a lot of equations that you won't explain. Don't include any photos. Engineering is not art. And try to make your figures as confusing as possible with tiny labels or no labels at all. And just assume your audience knows what you're talking about, so you don't really need to explain anything. Oral presentations are also great because you can explain every single step you've taken in your work, and it's a fun challenge to squeeze all of that information into whatever annoying time constraint the organizers gave you. Every single detail matters. Obviously, do not do any of this. All right, but we've seen all of these things come up at conferences of all the like what not to do's, and then some of us fall for it too. I have done a lot of the what not to do's as well, I will say. But what we want to actually accomplish. What is a research talk? What are we trying to do here? Do we want to showcase exciting new results? Yes, a finding, a result, a method. Remember, there are also cool results, even if the project is not complete. You want to inspire your community. You might want to get feedback on things that you're really confident and you're kind of trialing this out to see, like, we have this great new method. We think this is pretty foolproof, but we want feedback. Or maybe you're presenting something you're not actually confident about at all, and you want advice, so we can inspire a dialogue. Do we want to advertise our latest paper, whether it's published or not? Do we want to inspire future collaborations and build our network? All right. We also introduce yourself to your research community. Hi, I am Meghna Thomas, and I'm at UT Austin working on this project. Establish your reputation and do it through your research, really. All right. So, disclaimers for today. I have no actual publication or qualifications in public speaking. I have a PhD in civil engineering. We had a really involved seminar series when I was a graduate student, so I've gotten a lot of feedback, but I am not a professional public speaker. I'm just an engineering professor. All right. I'm also not your advisor. And so things that I share with you might go totally against their norms or expectations. They also know your specific field better than I do. And so definitely take their feedback and have that be above my feedback. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. All right, there are exceptions to every rule that I will give you and that you have heard. You're welcome to break them. Practice hopefully makes you more comfortable, right? This is an evolution. It is a process learning how to speak in front of 20 people and in front of 200 people. So hopefully this just, you'll over time, figure out your tendencies and get through your nerves. All right, even the best presenters have done all of the what not to do's. So there is zero judgment here on anyone at conferences. Everyone knows you're learning. It's a process. Everyone is continuing to learn and improve, no matter what stage of your career you are at. All right. And the other disclaimer I didn't write down is that I am sometimes really sarcastic. So especially take everything I say with like a couple of extra grains of salt, but I'll try to keep it under wraps today because you guys don't really know me. All right. So steps for crafting your presentation. I don't know what that red line is on my slide. All right. Step one. Who is your audience? All right. If it's at a conference, this is different from if it's your university seminar series, different from a collaborator meeting. Who is your audience? What are your main takeaways? What do you want the audience to learn? And then importantly, figure out what the audience actually needs to know to get there. All right. We will go into detail on each of these things in a bit, but what do they need to know to get through your takeaways? Step 4, outline your slides, fill them in, and then edit, rearrange, and make them pretty. They should be pretty. They should be, consistent font, nice aesthetics, but they should be effective is really what we're going for. You're not going to win a competition for the most beautiful slides. If you do, let me know. But they just need to get across your science, all right, your research. All right, step 1, who is your audience? Are they extremely familiar with your work? Are they people you see regularly? So in weekly meetings, topic-wise, so your advisor, your lab mates, collaborators that you have regular calls with. Is it a group of your peers, or are they senior colleagues? Are there potential employers in the audience or junior colleagues at a conference? Yeah, you're going to have this whole mix of bullet point 2 here. Are they experts in your field? Some of them, yes. Are they just generally very smart people? Is it a broad audience who knows nothing about your field, or are they experts in a totally different field? You could honestly have any mix of that. Even though you're going to a conference for a specific focus area, there will be people popping in who are just curious about your topic, who know nothing about it, although most people will have some vocabulary in what you're doing. All right. Your audience chose to listen to you. They could have just waited for the paper. So we need to make sure it is worth their time to be there with you. All right. The other thing, what are you getting out of your talk? I think when I started giving talks in grad school, I was really focused just on myself. I totally ignored the audience, which was a mistake. And I was just like, what am I the most excited to show? So do you want to show off? Do you want to appear very polished and confident? Are you advertising a new paper? Are you trying to get a job? Trying to find someone to fund your work? Do you want feedback? Do you want advice for things that you're uncertain about in your research? Do you want to allow space for ideas? In a seminar presentation, we can allow interruptions. We can allow discussion in the mid-course. At a conference presentation, we can't have discussion during it, but there are a few minutes for Q&A, and then there's all the breakout sessions afterwards where you can meet with people to go into much deeper discussion on what you've shown if you're open to that sort of feedback. Did your advisor make you do it? No, your advisor trusts that you're ready for this and they want you to shine and they want you to have this new experience, all right, because they know that you are ready for this opportunity. All right, so types of presentations and time constraints. So I'm not precisely familiar with the conference that you all are going through, but these are the types of different talks I have been assigned over the years. So a standard oral presentation conference talk, typically anywhere between, I would say, 8 and 15 or even 18 minutes, plus a couple of minutes of Q&A. That's kind of the standard stand in front of the room at the podium talk. There are some conferences that host e-lightning talks where you might have 3 to 5 minutes to give a presentation. It may not be a PowerPoint, it might be a digital screen that you kind of zoom in and out of, or these electronic poster sessions that are super fun. Lightning or flash talks. I had a talk once that was 60 seconds. They basically had 2 microphones and the speakers were lined up and they just cut off your microphone at 60 seconds and then it went to the other microphone and they rushed people on and off. Lightning talks, really cool, but you don't even have time to sneeze. So they're stressful. All right. And then usually, there's a minute of transition between speakers. So I'd say when your talk is next, make sure you are approaching the podium. Even if that speaker is still in Q&A, you need to be there and ready to go the second your timer starts. All right, so that you are staying on schedule and also you don't want to delay the next presenter. So even if you're super excited about the Q&A that you are in or you're running late on your slides, you need to be courteous to whoever's following you. So be very cognizant of your time constraints, kind of the dynamics of how the speakers are coming and going. Things to know before you go. Is the presentation already loaded onto a computer in the room? So you should go to the speaker ready room to make sure your slides, everything are set there that you can see beforehand. Is it a Mac or a Windows machine? Is your video format going to play? I can't tell you how many issues I've had with videos because I do everything on a Mac. Usually conferences are Windows. They're finally changing to Mac, but not always. So be very, very on top of your file types and formats. Or are you using your own laptop that you can just plug in? Do you need to bring a connector? I wrote to be wary of iPads as well, because I've seen a lot of iPads presenting in PowerPoint and the screen just flickers the whole time. So I would say make sure, hopefully you have a stable connection. All right. Given the time constraints of these are the more standard longer talks, I'll say that 8 to 15 minutes. How much time do we want to spend breaking up our different topic areas? All right. I would say all conference talks, no matter what your time limit is, needs a motivation. The audience needs to know, why are you doing what you're doing and why should they care what you're doing? And why will they hopefully want to take some piece of this with them into their own research or work? All right. Do you have time for background literature in a short talk? Maybe not. You might just want to jump into your own stuff there. But if you have 18 minutes, you can give a little bit of context, give highlights to the literature of predecessors who came before you, or of concurrent research, and or of people who might be in the room with you, to give credit to how they have led to this idea that you are now studying. For your research design and methods, this is an opportunity to teach the people in the audience. They're not going to understand their results if they don't know the process that it took to get there. All right, so what is your research design? What is your research question? What are the basic methods you're doing? All right, how much detail you go into will depend on the conference. For example, if you're presenting experimental work and you're in a room full of experimentalists, you can go through that kind of quickly. But if you're in a room of non-experts, you might need to give them 1 or 2 more slides of what does this method even mean? in the simplest terms possible. So be very thoughtful about how much introductory information you give them in your methods. All right, results. These numbers can really vary, right? 3 to 5 minutes worth of results versus 5 to 10 minutes of results. 10 minutes of results, that's heavy. All right, you hopefully have a lot to say there and are really deep into your PhD or deep into that project. So you want to give them enough results that show you've accomplished something. All right, you have found something. You might not be confident if it's right or not, but this is what you have discovered so far and what you think the interpretation and context is. All right, usually no matter what, one slide summary and conclusions just as an overview. You may have time to mention some brief future work that you're coming up with, especially if you're using this as an opportunity to network and kind of build relationships. So this is an opportunity in future work to build those connections. And then acknowledgements and Q&A, just kind of even something just to leave up on the screen, even if you don't have time to speak your acknowledgements out. All right. And obviously, depending on your audience's discipline, will a little bit influence where you kind of divide up some of this time. All right, managing your time. All right, the specific time limit is not a challenge to fit as much as possible into your talk. Don't squeeze 14 minutes worth of information into a 10-minute talk. I tend to talk really fast. I'm like trying to talk slower. Every time I give talks, I try to talk slower. But as a grad student, that was a struggle. So if I planned for a 10-minute talk, I delivered it in 8 minutes, no matter what. So I did add a few extra slides because I knew that it would happen really quickly. And I didn't want that like dead space or think, oh, she gave a short talk. She doesn't really know anything. So I guess that's over. But you do want to figure out kind of how much information is realistic to to coherently explain to your audience. I'd say also understand your nerves and tendencies. If this is your first conference talk, you don't know yet what your tendencies are. And so just kind of think about them while you're there, but don't get in your head. Under pressure, do you speak faster? For me, yes. Do you speak slower? For other people that I have seen, very much yes. Do you have a stutter that comes out when you are in situations like this? Do you freeze? All right, I have seen all of these things all of these things happen. They are all perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable responses to different types of stress. But if you think that, you are just going to like really slow down or really need to pause, you might only want to plan for an 8-minute talk out of a 10-minute time allotment because you are going to need those 10 minutes, like to really stretch that 8 minutes out to fill that. So I think it's really, it's important to just kind of to figure out what your nerve situation might be. It took me a couple years to realize this, but when I give conference talks, even now, it's like I'm 37 years old. I've given a lot of conference talks at this point. I yawn uncontrollably for the 20 minutes before my talk, and my hands get really ice cold, clammy, to the point that I sometimes approach the speaker before me, like ahead of time, and I say, like, look, I'm going to be yawning during your talk. It's not because you're boring. It's just because this is my nervous, my thing that happens. Once I start talking, I'm good. But beforehand, that is just my nerves. Like my body wants to shut down. All right. So you'll see what may come up, or nothing may happen. You may just shine in the eyes of stress. So I hope that's the case. But if not, totally cool. All right. Outlining your talk. This is flexible to some extent of the order you want to put things in. I do think we need a motivation. Why is this worth watching? Why is this relevant? What is it really addressing? What's your background? Do you need to give knowledge to get everyone on the same page? Even at a conference where you are in a room of 35 people who have all chosen to be at this one specific talk, don't assume common knowledge. Don't assume familiarity with acronyms. Acronyms can change even within disciplines. The pronunciation can change. What I call LIF, other people call PLIF. They add a P to it. All right. And so it's nice just to say the words out loud and make sure everyone is with you. All right, objectives. What are we looking for in your project? What is your contribution? What are your methods, facilities, and design? How are you accomplishing this work? Results. What have you found? Figures, tables, and commentary interpretation. And then your summary conclusions. Remind them of your original goals and how your findings did or didn't get there. I will say too, I know this talk is weird because it's a lot of text. If you saw a research presentation of mine, there's hardly any text, but this is a how-to. So this is what we got. All right, outline slides or my presentation overview slide. You do not need to show an outline slide saying, and I'll give you an example in a moment of what this is. It's a really common thing that people put as their slide number 2, presentation overview. You don't need to do this. You have a very limited amount of time and very limited amount of attention from your audience. So I would encourage you to not do this if you're able. All right, sometimes outline slides are great if you have a long talk or you're presenting multiple projects in one talk. All right, for a conference talk, you probably only have one real topic that you're doing, so this would not really apply. Outline slides, if you do have them, do not need to be at the beginning of your talk. Often they are, but they actually don't need to be. You can use them very strategic. So be thoughtful about whether you include it and what purpose it serves. All right, so this was my title slide today, sharpening your conference presentation skills. There's my name, there's my affiliations. I tend to put the date on there just so I know when I'm looking back up at my slides, I know when this was. If I had slide number 2, which is a really common thing as a slide number 2 at conference presentations, it would say the following. First, I'm going to introduce why it's important to give good presentations. Then I'm going to motivate my work. Then I'm going to show you my methods. Then I'm going to, and results presumably. Then I'm going to summarize this. Then I'm going to show you my future work. We know, right? This is the standard recipe for all conference talks. So instead, we could elevate this a little bit to make more use of our slides and of our time. So what if this were my slide, that I, instead of a plain black background, I have an image there or something for the audience to see, so that while they're introducing my name, they're like, oh, they can, start to get the landscape for what we're going to be doing today. Here is a title slide from a recent presentation I did. It's not my best one ever, but I was able to find this one on my computer. And so this was the title slide at one of my last conferences. There is a video on here. And so for, as soon as I got my laptop plugged in, there was 35 seconds that I had to wait until it was my time to go. And like while the session chair, introduced me and said my name. And so the audience got to watch this cool little ice sphere melting before I'd even started. So I was getting bonus time out of this, giving them some photos so that they know what we're doing. So that by the time my name was introduced, I did not need to read my title. I did not really need to tell them what I was doing because they had just seen it on the screen for the last 35 seconds. All right. As a nervous tick of mine, I do read my title because that's what gets me from yawning uncontrollably to able to speak. Is I read my title, I say my name, and then we go straight into it. If you look to the field, we see that the measurements of ice loss in glaciers is happening a lot faster than models predict. I didn't say I'm going to motivate my work. I didn't say I'm going to introduce my work. I don't have motivation as the title of my slide. All right, my slide is just the content. All right, the title here is what the audience can read themselves. I then get to speak into the impact and the importance of this. There's a little figure hiding. All right, and so here's where we start to get into some of the meat of things. All right, one of my rules, we've already kind of heard a few, but one of my main ones is really get images into your opening slides. All right, can you put them on your title slide and then slide 2? Forget the outline, just go right into it. All right. I study coastal processes and turbulence. So I usually put a picture of a beach, all right, in slide 2, depending on the specific topic. Or on the right, that was from the water crisis in like several years back. But do you want to make people happy? You want to make them calm? You want to get them angry and say there is a problem and this is how we're solving it. All right. Get some engagement from your audience, invite them in. All right. We need to direct our audience's attention. I know I'm taking a little bit long, but I feel like I'm actually getting close to the end. Don't worry, Magna. So selectively give your audience a storyline to follow. In terms of practical advice here, it can be really helpful to write your conclusion slide first. All right, you only have 12 slides in a conference presentation. Write your conclusions first. Then you get to strategically place the information that they need to get there. Again, what do they need to know to understand your takeaways? This is not the same thing as what is everything you have worked your rear end off for the last few years. This is just what do they actually need? There are going to be things that you spent a lot of time on that get left out, and that's okay. All right. Don't give them distracting tidbits or tangents that might distract them. Even if it's a really cool, fun fact, this is not the time for that. All right. Save that for lunch. All right. The most logical storyline order is not always chronological. This is one of the biggest pitfalls I would say that I see and that I've gotten trapped in. All right. The month before my dissertation was due, I rearranged the entire thing because something that I discovered in year 6 made a lot more sense to put into chapter 2. All right. So be very thoughtful about navigating your story. All right. Planning your slides, rule of thumb, 1 minute per slide typically. All right. One topic or takeaway per slide as well is really helpful to make sure you're not overcrowding things. An exercise I do with my students, they practice their talk, they make their slides, and then I say, if you could only tell me 1 sentence for this slide, what would it be? And if they can't squeeze it into 1 sentence, they need to break it up into multiple slides. All right. Everything must be legible. Everything must be legible. If you have a figure and you're just copying the figure in from the paper, you're going to need to blow up the legends, the axis labels, etc. Everything needs to be legible, usually size 20 or above in my experience. One large figure is better than a cluster of really small figures so that they know exactly where to look. Also, pictures worth 1,000 words. Make cartoons, spend that time. I spent 8 hours. I was on a ski trip, but I spent 8 hours in the hotel room making a cartoon, and I use it in almost every single talk I give still, and that was 12 years ago. So use these strategically. Use text only as needed. This presentation, obviously not a great example of that because it's a lot of text, but use text only as needed. Cue yourself and give the big picture to your audience, but do not give them sentences and stuff. All right. How much time do you explain spending details? This is a graph of the amount of time you spent figuring something out and the amount of time you want to talk about it. No, that is not going to be the same thing as how interesting, how much time do you want to talk about it and how interesting is it to your audience? No correlation. All right. Don't get caught up on, I worked so hard on this, I need to tell them. That may or may not be part of your talk. All right. I'll say a couple last things. Any content is fair game for questions. If you have a mistake, someone's going to see it and they're going to ask you about it. If you cite someone's work, make sure you're giving an accurate representation of their work. Also, if you're not citing someone important who is in the audience and their work is really relevant, they might call you out on it. They might be upset about it. You might not have time to talk about the background of it. So you may have a perfectly reasonable excuse not to cite their work in it. But if you are presenting background information and you're leaving out kind of key contributors, because it's a conference and not just reading the paper, there could be people who sometimes get their feelings hurt. So just that's not your fault, but be aware that these things can happen. You are in charge of the vocabulary and jargon of your talk, all right? Trying not to get caught up in very field-specific lingo that might not be relevant universally. I'll skip the last thing because it'll be on the video anyway. All right, how to handle Q&A. Thank the speaker for their question. Breathe. All right, you can repeat the question if you didn't fully hear it or understand it. All right, make sure you know what you're actually answering before you start answering it. If you know the answer, tell them. Great. All right, feel free to elaborate or go one step further into something you've been thinking about. So answer their question and then you can kind of continue saying, this has inspired this other idea. I'm so glad you asked that. I've been really thinking about these next experiments that we're gonna be working on. This is what we're expecting. Give them more information. Even if it is a yes or no question, do not just say yes. Next question, please. Yes, why? No, we didn't find that. This is why we think we didn't get it. We know that this is different from what these other studies have found, but this is what our data show. And so I just, I can only show you what we've learned in our experiments. If you don't know the answer, wow, that's a really interesting point. Thank you for bringing that up. I really haven't thought about that before, but I would really like to dig into that deeper. This is my gut feeling on it, or maybe we can chat after the break a little bit, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that, on your question a little bit more. You can kind of deflect it, but don't let it get thrown off. You can also say, I don't know. I gave a talk once last year and people got fixated on this one tiny detail, and it was like an open seminar. So they had like an hour of Q&A just because that was what the setup was. 17 people asked me about this topic, and I was like, I don't know. They kept asking me. I was like, I really, really don't know. And then they're like, okay, we'll finally stop pestering you on this, but it'll happen. Yeah, in the line, I'd be happy to discuss further afterwards. If things are getting heated or confusing, that is a way to get yourself out of this situation. All right, regarding the final slide, give acknowledgements. If there's something you didn't have time to present, you could hint at that in your final slide to guide your questions. You can down on your conclusion slide, just put your conclusions. Sorry if I'm out of time. You guys can read the conclusions. Thank you so much for your attention. You can end with a video or a graphic to emphasize your findings. This is a sneaky insider tip to guide your Q&A. If you put up a cool video that you know they're going to ask things about, thank your audience, open it up for questions. So I often end with a photo of my group, or I end with this really cool photo where ripples form. It's lovely, I won't show it. But it always gets the questions going if I'm worried there's going to be silence. Last things is actually the last things. All right, my final tips and tricks. Get yourself in, figure out what is your routine that lets you perform, all right? Do you want to read the title slide? Perfectly cool to do so. Do you need to memorize it and then go from there? Or are you cool with thinking on the spot and winging it? All right, practice it, not wing it, but be present. Wear what makes you feel confident, all right? That's open to interpretation. You want to be professional, but wear what you feel good in, all right? Own the room. There are people who will sometimes like sneak into the hall and do jumping jacks before it gets the adrenaline going. Do what you need to do, all right? Also during your talk, I would say it can be important. Sometimes you feel like you're not getting any feedback. I kind of look around and I'm like, who is engaging with me right now? I like make eye contact and I give my presentation to like 2 or 3 people who are actually smiling, who are paying attention, who look focused, because it makes me feel like I'm doing a good job. So, and then I stay engaged. Or look above their heads. If there's a clock in the back of the room, you can stare at that. At least you're looking out and you're not, looking at your slides that are behind you. The last bit, you only know as much as you know so far. All right, you have learned a lot about one topic. You're always going to be learning more. You know more about this than some other people. They know more about other things than you. It is all part of the process, all part of the dialogue. So definitely do not feel scared that you're going to be asked something you don't know. You will be asked something you don't know. That's the point. That's why we're learning. That's why we're all going through this together. All right, so thanks very much for your attention. Sorry for being a little bit long, but yeah, if there's time, happy for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Blair. That was really great. If anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat. We can wait a couple of minutes if you need to type something out.
Hi, Dr. Johnson. I actually have a question. Thanks for the presentation. Just to introduce myself, this is my first time joining this call. I was forwarded, I'm attending the WDSA CCWI conference in Italy this summer, if anyone else is, so I'd love to connect. Great presentation, and I will be presenting at that conference, and just have a question on practicing for a presentation. I find myself often, I'll read it to myself a few times. At most, I'll go over it with a coworker perhaps, but what are some additional steps to really hone it in and kind of break the familiarity of practicing? I feel like sometimes it gets pretty routine. So what do you do that you find effective?
That was a really good question. So thank you for that. Yeah, something I didn't even mention, but yeah, practicing super important. You should have different groups to practice for if you can convince your friends to do that, especially if there's a group of you going to the conference, present for your lab mates. Just if you can, ask your advisor, like, this is, group meeting this week, can we just do mock presentations? So do it for them, ask them to come up with hard questions for you as well. Give you some easy ones, but also some tricky ones. So I'd say definitely, practice as much as you can. Like, I'd say practice for people who do understand the subject matter to make sure that what you're presenting is accurate. Then find some friends who are in a different area, but still in your department, whatever, or friends who you just have from life who have nothing to do with engineering. Present for them too, to see, can they generally follow. What do they take away? When I write research proposals, I send them to my mom, whose degree is in fashion. And I just say, like, Mom, what are 3 things that you have gotten out of this 20-page proposal? And she tells me, and she has been spot on. If she understands it, I get the proposal. If she doesn't understand it, I don't get the proposal. I don't get funded. So you present for non-experts. You can present in front of your dog. All right. They're great because they're not going to interrupt you and they're not going to ask you any rude questions. But really, find a few different audiences and do that, buy a couple pizzas, just make it an event to have a few people share their work. I always personally have found too, once I have like 1 or 2 good practices, and then I have a practice where I bomb it. Like, I go way over the time, I forget my words, I have no idea what's next. For me, once I have a bad practice, then I know I'm ready to perform. All right. If I only have good practices, then I'm like, I'm going to mess it up in real time. So but find your group. But practice is really, really helpful just to know your timing, your confidence, your transitions.
Yeah, thank you. Very helpful.
Any other questions from the audience? If not,
And
I might.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Megan.
I had a short question about timing. During the actual presentation, do you keep checking your watch, or do you just kind of hope that you're making it on time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's one conference I go to where they literally have a whole like giant TV screen in the front of the room that is taking the time, and it changes from green to yellow to red. So it's like anxiety central, this TV, and they're synchronized through the whole conference center. So that one, you know exactly what your timing is. Some conferences will also have a little clock on the podium, so it is showing you ticking through. I always have my phone out though. I put my phone like right next to my laptop, or sometimes depending on your PowerPoint, it will tell you where you are. So I do kind of check the timing. If it's like an 8-minute one, like you don't have time to check it, you just need to go. But especially if it's like, I say 12 minutes or more, I do check my phone once or twice. And so I kind of know, like when I get to my introducing the turbulence tank slide, I know that I should be at 3.5 minutes. And so like, if I'm not there, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what I can cut on within the next 3 slides. There, I always have like a couple things identified. If I can skip this and it'll be okay, or if I've gotten there really fast, I also know when I get to slide 7, I can explain this more because there's a really cool detail that I'd like to share, but I might not have time. So I always have kind of like a couple set points where I know this is minute 4, this is minute 7, etc. And then where can I stretch and where can I eliminate in real time? Because sometimes if your motivation slide, like sometimes I'll take 3 minutes on that. And I'm like, oh, that was half of my talk. Whoops. So to know how do you adjust that, or what can you skip?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The last quick thing I wanted to say is, I have been to 2 conferences where like a third of the audience walked out during my presentation, and it wasn't a bad talk. Well, I think it was a good talk. It was just the wrong talk for that audience. It was the same talk I'd given at a different conference, not realizing that fluid mechanicians and coastal engineers don't want to hear the same thing. And I needed to motivate, like, why does turbulence matter to the coastal people in a different way from the fluid mechanics boundary layer nerds. And so really, really paying attention to your audience, and like really giving them the proper motivation and like the buy-in, like they want to know why this is important. Those are really good lessons for me. So it may still happen one day. But yeah, when that happens, like, and you can't like, you still have to keep going. So I'm like literally watching people's backs walk out of the conference venue. I was like, oh, like I really messed this up, but it's okay. For the people who stayed, hopefully they liked it.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
If anyone has questions, feel free to keep putting them in the chat for the rest of this, for the rest of the webinar. For now, thank you again, Blair. We're going to move on to Tomer, who's going to talk about posters now.
Yes, thank you, Magna. Yeah, so my name is Tomer. I'm a graduate student from Israel. I'm going to talk a little bit about creating and presenting a poster. Just to give a couple of ideas what you should keep in mind when you make your poster and when you prepare to present it. I'm not sure how many of you are going to present during the EWRI, or how many of you are presenting for the first time. So I'll just start with what you should expect. Generally, a poster event, the posters are presented in a designated area. People are just given time to just go around and look on their own. And you'll be asked to just stand near your poster and present to whoever comes to you and is interested in your research. A couple of events that I took part in there were judges who were also walking around, and just they required a more formal presentation, but I don't think that's going to be the case in the EWRI. And after the session, the posters will be displayed for the entire conference. So there will just be displayed for anybody who wants to see them during the breaks or whenever they get the chance. So naturally, a couple of objectives here for the poster. And they could be contradicting a little bit, because on the one hand, you want to allow for a flowing presentation, you want the poster to take you from one topic to the next without any interruptions or confusion. And you want to keep it short and brief. You want to include all the key points. But on the other hand, you want to provide the coherent overview of the research, even when you're not there to present, because that's going to be, most of the time, the poster is not going to be presented by you. It's just going to be displayed there. And it should be able to provide coherent information. So this is not a trivial task. It could be very challenging. And so I'll go on for the how to make a poster. I should say that I tried to look up online some official templates of the EWRI poster, and I couldn't really find any. So I suggest just using PowerPoint. It is very straightforward and easy to do. At least that's what I used for my posters when I presented in the past. As for the structure of the poster, it is very flexible. So just go with whatever feels right for you and whatever helps you present the easiest. The figures, I think, are the key for any good poster. This is a very good tool to deliver information very efficiently and save room in the poster. Just take text and put it into a figure. A very good tip is just to take your methodology. If you have a methodology that you want to present, just take it and squeeze it into a flowchart that makes it very clear and very efficient to explain. Same goes for the results. Just fit it into a figure or a chart. It will be very easy to explain. You want to be able to minimize the amount of text that you put into the poster. Obviously, you need it, but try to lower this down to a minimum. And if you do put text, try to organize it into bullet points. That would be very clear and efficient way to provide this information. And also avoid using abbreviations and acronyms to prevent the confusion when you're not presenting the poster and people have to read it themselves. And you should keep in mind that a poster should reveal key points at first sight. You want to be able to just look at a poster and instantly understand what's going on there. What is the problem at hand? What this research is about. Moving on to the presentation. 3 key points about the presentation. The audience is going to be usually a small audience. So it's going to be 2 or 3 people max from my experience. So this is a very good opportunity to just talk to somebody about your research in a very informal way, very personal way. This is a great way to interact and network. So I think that when you make the poster, you should keep in mind that maybe you should try and fit things and include things in the poster that will attract people and give you this opportunity to network. When you present, you should focus on the visual aids. Remember that the text that you put in there, this is usually for the people who will read the poster when you're not presenting it. So focus on the visual aids and keep this in mind. And lastly, posters are usually presented in short time. I don't think that the EWRI limits the amount of time that you need to present in, but usually people have a short attention span. And don't worry about not including all the information. Just select 2 or 3 key points, key conclusions that you have from your research, deliver this, and if people are asking more questions afterwards, you can expand and provide more information. Lastly, I think it was 2 weeks ago that my university had actually had a poster presentation event, and I was able to take a couple of pictures of posters that I thought was more successful and less successful. So these two posters I thought was not very successful in my opinion. Just very, I think a little bit disorienting, a lot of figures, a lot of colors. You're just looking, why is there a tank here? It's a little bit confusing, I thought. So you want to have some kind of a structure and some kind of a balance between text and figures, so you will have some kind of a logical order of things. On the other end, I thought those two were kind of nice, kind of pleasant to look at. You could listen to a presentation and look at the poster and not get confused. You could easily track what's going on there. Yeah, this is my general idea of a poster. Again, as Blair said, same goes for me. I'm not an expert on poster making. I'm just a student like all of you. But yeah, that's all I have, and thank you, and good luck.
Thanks so much, Tomer. That was really great. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Or does anyone have any, I don't know, insights from your own poster sessions that you'd like to share? We'll hang on for 30 seconds if someone wants to type in the chat or think of a question. Okay, just in case someone's typing, I'm going to ask a quick question. Do you know how long it would take to make a good poster? Because I've made some before, and I thought it would be really fast, like an afternoon's work. But then I realized it took me like a week to build it and then edit it and then re-edit it and then make it more cohesive. How long do you think it would take, Tomer? Or how long should someone prepare?
Well, that's a good question. I had made like 2 posters, I think, in my experience. Each of them took me a couple of hours. I think it was because it was based on a paper, so I already had the figures and the text, and I just had to fit it in there. But yeah, it could vary. It could take a lot of time, so you should keep that in mind.
Excellent. Thank you.
I got a short question. So when you prepare your poster presentation, like how many minutes do you usually propose to present your work? You probably give like a 10 minutes or 5 minutes, or try as short as possible.
I think usually it's between 5 and 10 minutes, from my experience at least. But I think if there's no formal presentation period, it's just a conversation between you and some other guy, like a one-on-one, where you're presenting to 2 people. Possibly you can take your time and see where this goes.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question. If there's no one else for now, if anyone has any more questions, please drop them in the chat, and maybe we move on now. Thanks, Tomer. You move on to Sabrina next.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina and I'm a postdoc at UBC. Before I'm a member of the WDSA grad student committee. Before I started my postdoc, I did my PhD in the UK during COVID. So I'm going to talk about conference do's and don'ts. However, a lot of my conferences that I have done were during COVID, so it was like online. But I've got some things. I've been to 2 conferences in person since then, so I've got a few do's and don'ts. Feel free to jump in, or if you disagree. I'm not, you know, people have different opinions on this, but I'm going to kind of be a bit broad about do's and don'ts. I think some of these also Blair spoke about, so I might be repeating a tiny bit. So do's, let's go through those first. So when you start, and like when you ask a question, always announce who you are and your university, or I guess industry, but you'll all be university anyway. When you're speaking, just bear in mind most people there have never met you before, so they'd be quite interested to know where you're coming from when you've got your questions and your insights. I also keep up with like the recent literature before going to the conference, just to have an idea on what to expect people to be talking about, and also if you've got questions and you kind of have recent things to refer to, just something that I do with just some papers that I'm interested in. I'll have a little read before the conference. I mean, usually you've got the brochure and you've got the speakers, so you can kind of look into their work as well before you go to the conference. Yeah, so that's what I do, is like read up on the conference abstracts, and select like any talks and posters that you definitely want to attend before you go. I usually like go through and like highlight, oh, I definitely want to see that one, I definitely want to see that one, and then some of the other time I kind of go with the flow. So it's always good to have an idea exactly the ones you want to see, definitely, so that you don't miss them. Another thing I do is like set an appropriate location for the talks. So for example, if you're staying for like the next few sessions, then go and sit in the middle of the seats, in the middle of the row. But if you're like leaving mid sessions to go to a different talk after the end of one talk, don't sit in the middle, sit at the side, so that you can like creep off quickly, and you're not like asking people to get out of the way. There's like, it'll usually be in quite a big hall, so there's like plenty of opportunities to sit in different places, because some conferences have different rooms to go to. I mean, smaller conferences will be in the same room, but in these big large ones you're gonna have to swap in and out different halls, so sit on the side if you're gonna leave. While you're listening to the talk, it's always good to just think of some questions to ask, even if you don't have the courage to ask them this time. It might help you to stay alert, just to be like going through the conference and being like, this is the question I could ask if I wanted to ask it. You may have the opportunity to ask this question later on in the break, so it's always good just to have a think, even if you don't want to ask it this time, just what would I ask given the opportunity. Another thing I'd do is like get involved in the social activities. It might be tempting to hang out with people that you already know, like from a university, people that you met before at other conferences, but it's good to interact with new people. And this might be quite daunting, but after there's like the talk, there's usually breaks, and coffee breaks and meals and things. It's always good just to introduce yourself to someone if you liked their talk or something, and just, you know, people are usually really friendly at conferences and they're willing to engage and share the same passion for your subject. So yeah, it's always good to meet new people. You never know, like down the line, this is just like the start of your career, you never know who you're going to work with in the future, so it's always good to have a good impression, so that maybe you're going to work with this person and they'll be like, oh, I remember talking to you at this conference. So yeah, I kind of use it as like a little bit of a networking event and try and involve myself in all the social things. I like to arrive early to the conference. I kind of, especially these big international ones, try and get there a couple of hours before the conference begins, maybe the day before, because of like maybe travel delays from unexpected circumstances. You know, you might miss the last bus, etc. So always try and plan to be there within time. It's fine to go sit in a coffee shop and do some work if you're early, just because you never know what unexpected thing might happen. And if you are late or something like that happens in a different country, you know, it's always good to like be safe over anything else. So I'm sure your supervisor won't mind if you have to take a taxi rather than go on like a dodgy bus or something at midnight, or walking somewhere dangerous. Like, just think about those things later. Always be like, okay, I'm going to do this because it's safer, rather than put yourself in any danger. But yeah, try and plan ahead and get there early and be ready. And yeah, do have fun, because the conference is like a highlight of the academic year. It's there to kind of showcase what you've done, what you've achieved, and what other people have achieved. So it's always good to be like, oh, this is for me, and I'm going to celebrate this conference and enjoy myself. So those are the do's that I thought of. For the don'ts, These are kind of stuff that I probably wouldn't do, like use short forms in what I'm speaking. Because the conference is quite a formal event and not everyone is experts in your area that's coming to talk, that's coming to listen to you. So it's good to kind of explain something before you like abbreviate it or whatever, so that everyone has an idea, because not everyone will be an expert. Yeah, so just explain rather than just say something which people not everyone's going to understand. Don't talk over other people. You know, if people are going to be asking questions and things, don't just butt in, like put your hand up or whatever. It's not the event to be speaking over other people. If your phone goes off, you know, don't pick up your phone and start talking. Leave the room and speak. Like it's a bit rude to just have a phone call or whatever while someone's speaking. Don't overstress too much about your presentation. Like I rehearse and I prepare, but I don't like overstress. You know, you want to have a good time at the conference. You don't want to be spending the whole time like before your talk in your room stressing. It's like, no, go out there and watch other presentations and relax yourself a bit. Don't obsess about it. Don't be offended if someone offers you an observation rather than a question. This happens quite a lot. Yeah, they're a bit tricky to deal with sometimes. But just bear in mind that people usually ask you offer observations because they're generally interested and want to know more about your work, or they want to validate your work against their work in the field. I usually just say thank you for your well thought out observations and then move on to the next question, because yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do sometimes when someone just stands there and talks for 5 minutes about their observations. You just have to grin and bear it and just be like, we can talk more about this after. Don't fall asleep. If you're feeling tired at the start of the session, like sit near an exit so you can leave again when tiredness gets the better of you. But yeah, just I've seen people fall asleep before, you know, don't be one of those, like leave. If you're tired, go and get a coffee, you know. It's not the place to be falling asleep. And then finally, don't be afraid to say no. So sometimes people might offer you a drink, you don't have to take a drink, you don't have to go for food with anyone, you don't have to have a coffee break with anyone, you don't have to take anyone's number or email. It's not rude to say no, even if someone's more senior than you and they're like trying to, you know, give you something. You don't have to take it. It's perfectly acceptable to say no to these types of things. It's not rude. You don't have to attend an event with someone you've just met. If someone's making you feel a bit uncomfortable, you can reach out to your supervisor. I mean, at this event, if your supervisor's not there, you can always talk to one of us from the committee and we can help you out. But yeah, it's perfectly fine to say no. Don't feel like your career is going to go down or anything like that. It's perfectly fine to say no. Yeah, so that's basically my do's and don'ts. I mean, I'm sure other people have got some others, but that's the ones I can think of. So if anyone's got any questions, then feel free to message me or ask now. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, that's it, Meghna.
I agree with Blair. I think that was great. Thank you so much, Sabrina. Any questions or comments on that? I think that was all really good advice. I only went to my first conference last year, and I feel like a lot of that was very relevant. If I had known that, I would have been a little better prepared. So thank you. Okay, maybe for now we move on to Ali. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or after we're done with our next section, I think that will be the end. So feel free to unmute yourself then. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you, Sabrina. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us this far. Do you see my screen? So I am Aly Salem, student, PhD student at the University of Illinois, Chicago. I'm a member of the WSDA Graduate Student Committee. So the main goal of this webinar is to help you get the most out of your conference. There are simple things you can do to do so. First, you will have to get your work done. whether it's a presentation or a poster, you have to get it done before the conference for sure. I know we typically keep things to the last minute, but of course you don't want to stay at your room working on your presentation and miss the presentations of the conference. In the previous part, my colleagues talked about how you can get your presentation and poster prepared, things like do and don'ts. And I believe most of you will be attending the next EWRI, or at least you might be attending it in the next years. So I will be focusing on how to plan for the next EWRI. And I believe you can follow a similar approach if you'll be attending any other conference. At the end of this presentation, I will also talk about some of the places you should be visiting in case if you will be attending the EWRI. So one of the best tools you can use to plan for the EWRI conference is the ASCII conference and event application. It's available for both iPhone and Android, and you can easily download them from these QR codes. Personally, I didn't know about this app until I saw one of my colleagues using it by chance. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to introduce it to you. Simply, the app allows you to do many things like browsing sessions, adding notes, downloading the slides, all the way to creating a personal schedule and keeping the schedule in your pocket. So let's get a quick look on the app. For sure, I'm not going to go deep. I will just show you the general things. So let me turn on the app very quick. Okay, so the first thing, once you open the app, you will see a lot of events happening. And the first thing you will notice is that EWRI 2024 is not here yet. So we will go ahead and use the 2023 EWRI. It will be the similar thing, nothing different. Once you do select the event, you will have to log in or create an account. It's a very simple process. You can enter information here if you don't, but since I have an account already, I will just enter it here very quickly. Just give me a second. So it's taking a little bit more time, but getting it ready. Okay. Oh. Might take like few seconds, but it's a very simple process. Just accept the terms and conditions. Feel free to read them. It will ask them to complete your profile. You can do this very simply. So for that. Okay, so this is the main screen. It's a very simple and straightforward. So here in the happening now, you can see what's going on in real time. Of course, it's not going to show anything since this event already ended 1 year ago. The schedule will simply show you all the sessions and like all the sessions, the presentations, and you can sort this by date. And let's say that you are interested in like one of the presentations. Let's just select a random presentation. As you can see here, you will be looking at all the important information about this presentation. You can add notes in case if you have like questions and you would like to keep it to ask the presenter. And of course, you can like add this to your favorite, which will show up in your schedule. So all your presentations, which you added to your favorite, will be shown here. And again, you will be able to browse this by date. And just in case if you met like a researcher and you would like to set a meeting with them, you can simply press add meeting, add all the meeting information, and it will be added directly to your calendar so that you don't miss it. One other thing you can do is to search for all the speakers and attendees. So personally, I feel that I should connect to some of the presenters, so you can look over them here by just writing their names, and most of them will have their LinkedIn added, this like a short bio, some information about the presentations they will be giving. So personally, I think this app is very useful and it will help you effectively plan for your next EWRI. So I hope you find this app useful. And since we already mentioned this, we are done with the planning part. And let's see what you can do in case if you have some free time. Personally, I live in Chicago, so I typically go to Milwaukee when I want to have some nice locations to visit. And one of the best locations where you can go is the Milwaukee Art Museum. It's located in Milwaukee downtown, 1 mile away from the conference venue. So it would take you like 25 minutes walking. Unfortunately, the walking hour coincides with the conference hours, so you might not be able to go during the conference days, but in case if you are arriving a little bit early or you will be leaving a little bit late, you will definitely find it a very nice place to go. In case if you like architecture or paintings, this is the place you should visit. In case if you don't have time, you can simply go to Milwaukee Riverwalk. It's only 10 minutes walking and it's open 24 hours. Of course, I don't recommend staying there very late, but you can definitely go and do some exercises if you are into it. The third place is the Basilica of Saint Joseph. It's a little bit more distance walk. You can drive there. It would only take 7 minutes. And you can look for the working hours because it varies from day to day. There are a lot of wall sculptures there, very nice architecture. Personally, I enjoyed the time I spent there. And the last attraction, which my favorite, is the Devil's Lake State Park. It's 2 hours driving, but I am 100% sure that it's worth it. There's a lot of nice and beautiful sceneries there. The sunset is amazing. And if you have like a flight one day after the end of the conference, I think you should give it a try. So thank you so much, everyone, and I hope to see you in Milwaukee soon.
Thank you so much, Ali. Does anyone have any questions or comments or insights of their own? I guess we have a to-do list of things to do in Milwaukee now.
Yeah.
But I did have a question about the planning a schedule. Maybe this is for you and Blair and Sabrina. So I've noticed that in this coming conference, I'm interested in a bunch of sessions that happen simultaneously. So my plan is to attend one talk here and then exit the session and go join the other talk. Is that rude or is that okay if I like step out before someone starts presenting?
I see. I think it's a good question, Meghna, and it depends on the perspective you are looking at it. So personally, if I'm presenting and I see like people skipping the room, I might not have like a good feeling. But to be honest, it's totally fine because things happens. You might have something urgent. You didn't really feel that you are interested with my presentation, so you are free to leave. So personally, I do it sometime, and I know it's very annoying that you have to miss nice presentations because you are attending other presentations. So if I'm giving you an advice, I would first try to like read the abstract, make sure that I really need to attend both of them, because when I did that the last time, I simply missed both of them. I attended the first, I couldn't continue to listen to the important part, the results for sure. And when I went to the other presentation, I missed the introduction, so I felt lost while attending the results part. So I don't recommend to, do that, but in case if you have to, it's totally fine.
Can I jump in and add on that? I completely agree. I think too, sometimes you have to figure out just how far apart they are. So like if the talks are like right down the hall from each other, yeah, like as soon as you see the conclusions, like get a quick look at it, run out before Q&A, and you will just barely make it before the next one starts. But if it's like a half-mile walk, you just need to pick one and commit. But yeah, I mean, there's people running in and out every talk. And so I think, yeah, just because you're presenting in a session, you don't need to stay in that session the whole time. It is nice to go ahead of time to introduce yourself to the chair, also so that they know how to pronounce your name. Yeah, you don't have to stay the whole time. Yeah, there was one conference I went to in Denver, and I on my phone, I realized later I'd walked 5 miles in the conference center because I was just back and forth the whole day. So also wear good shoes. But yeah, no problem to step out.
Excellent. Good to know. Thank you. In case anyone's thinking of more questions, I'm going to quickly take a second. I should have done this at the beginning, but I'm going to do it now. And I'm going to put 3 things in the chat. In case you'd like to join us or have any questions or comments, please email us at this email address. Or please follow our LinkedIn, because we do post a lot of job opportunities and stuff. I think it's a useful page to follow. And if you are coming to this EWRI conference, please fill out this Google form. We'd love to have you join us at the social event. We'd love to have you join us at the career panel session. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I think I sent these only to one person. I'm going to resend these to everyone in the chat. My bad. Does anyone have any more questions? If not, thank you so much for joining us. I think this was a really great webinar. We're going to put a recording of this online in the next couple of days, and we're going to send everyone an email with it, so you can come back to listen to all of these useful tips again. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Magna. See you soon.
Thank you.